Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to post a quick video responding to a wonderfully informative video Artisans of Vol posted about 10 hours ago now, called The Bevel Tips and Tricks in Blender They Never Told You About. Great video. He has a lot of good tips there. I'll drop a link to it in the description of this one. Now, in case you didn't see it, one of the things he recommends is, let me go ahead here, if you have a cylinder, for example, and you are wanting to round off the end of this cylinder with a bevel. Let's add a few segments in there and clamp it. His recommendation is not to go all the way down to a single vertex on the end of the cylinder. Instead, he recommends leaving a small flat face like this. And the reason for that is that this face now will be perfectly perpendicular to the original z-axis of the cylinder. This way, if you are working on a larger composition and you have, for example, rotated this around and moved it into place somewhere and have found out that you want to make some small adjustment along this z-axis, well, normally you would just hit grab and then you would tap Z twice and put it into local transform mode. But if you have, for some reason, either accidentally or because of modifiers you've been using, if you have applied the rotation of that, Z twice just leaves you in global orientation. So the standard method just doesn't work. Vol's idea is leave this face and then you can go into edit mode. You can select this face and orient your view to the selected face with Shift number pad 7. Now we can use the viewport orientation dropdown up here in the middle of the viewport to switch to view orientation. And now if I select the entire object, or if I tab out into object mode, hitting grab and Z moves us up and down in the Z axis along the viewport. So we're moving directly away from and toward the view. I find this very awkward to use. First of all, you can see right now, since we're in an orthographic view, you can't even tell that it's moving. You have to rely on your numbers. So let's make use of Blender's ability to store transforms instead. I'm going to undo several dozen times until we're back to the original unbeveled cylinder. Let me pop back over here into the basically original orientation. So here's our original cylinder. If I bevel it now, and I go all the way down to a single vertex, and I'm going to merge that stack of 32 vertices in the center there into a single one. Definitely go watch Artisans of Vol's video if you didn't follow that. He actually explains that quite well. The reasons why you would need to merge vertices, the problems that it can cause if you don't, all of that kind of stuff. Now, you may already know every vertex and face has a normal pointing out from it. And this data is automatically calculated and used by Blender for shading. We can see them if we turn on the normals overlay. Once you're in edit mode, the new button appears here, and we can turn on normals and maybe scale them up just a little bit so we can see them better. Now you can see the normal that is pointing out of each one of these vertices. And if we scroll in, take a look at the normal pointing out of that center vertex. It is pointing exactly along the original z-axis of this cylinder. So if we drop back out to object mode, and if we have rotated this thing around and moved it somewhere and then applied that rotation for some reason, now when we go back into edit mode, that vertice's normal is still pointing directly along the original z-axis. So now I can go into vertex mode and select it. And now in the transform orientation tool, there's this little plus that says create orientation. When I click that, it creates an orientation based on that vertex's normal. Oh, and just like everything else in Blender, you can name this new orientation however you like. So you can say cylinder original orientation. So now if we leave that selected in the dropdown, and we pop back out to object mode. When I grab this and lock it to Z, we're locked right back into the original orientation. And we can orient our viewport however we want and make very fine adjustments. And we can also, of course, do that in the original X and Y directions as well, without having to adjust our view to any specific perspective. Now, there is one case where this approach won't work, and that's if you start deforming the mesh around that vertex. So if I take this edge loop and rotate it, you can see that normal is now pointing in a different direction. I don't consider this much of a drawback, though, because you'll have the same problem if you're using Vol's approach with the single face. So I don't really think it's worth worrying about. If you know you're going to be rotating your cylinders around and moving them and aligning them, using the transform orientation tool is, I think, an absolute time saver. Drop me a like if you found the video helpful. Happy modeling. And again, Vol, thank you very much. I have found quite a few of your videos very useful. You're doing great work, man. Keep it up.